Cherie, this is the subject that don't nobody want to talk about, but
No,
we got to talk about it.
they want to talk about it. They think Panama is cheap.
Well, I mean,
Cheap is subjective,
and it's relative.
and I would not necessarily say that. But
Y'all need to stay tuned because we're going to tell you exactly.
how much it really costs to live in Panama City, Panama.
Stay tuned. We'll be back right after this. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Behind Closed Doors with the Brookses. I can't believe, babe, that this is now 72 episodes in a row. For those that don't know, my name's Glenn P. Brooks Jr., and I'm an author, I'm a speaker, I'm a coach. I'm also a pastor. We pastor an online offering that you can meet up with us every week if that's what you're interested in doing. But more importantly, for today, I'm an expat that's trying to figure out how we navigate through this. This lovely, beautiful lady who's looking at me all confused because I didn't introduce her and she's on a rhythm.
It's okay. I'm Cherie A. Brooks Jr., author, speaker, relationship coach, and co pastor, and also an expat living here in Panama, which by the time you see this, we will probably be getting ready to celebrate our 2-year anniversary here in Panama.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we're choosing to celebrate our second anniversary with our Breakfast in the Word community at First Saturdays. If you guys are interested in ever meeting up with us, we do an event every first Saturday. It's a gospel brunch over at Mika's Cafe in San Francisco, Panama, not California. Um, and it serves several purposes. One, that particular spiritual community meets up, but it's also a networking opportunity for expats and locals and people who really, quite frankly, just kind of coming through and they want to get a chance to meet us.
Right. So if you want to meet us, come on the first Saturday here in Panama and come and meet us at Mika's Cafe. You can get more information by clicking the links in the description. So before we get started on today's topic, I first want to do a huge shout out to our Day One members, our Day One Plus members. If you're interested in supporting our channel, join the channel and become one of our Day One members. Also, you can also be a super fan by giving us a little heart, a little gift while you're watching the show if this adds any value to you. We also want to encourage you guys to subscribe and share the channel out so that we can continue to grow and meet and reach more and more people every week. So today's topic is one that we're often asked.
Yep.
And if I have to be honest, I haven't really wanted to really get into the details of this, but because you guys keep asking, we're going to share today. Now, I'm not going to get too personal, but we're going to share. So we're going to talk about how much does it really cost to live in Panama City, Panama?
So there's often these thoughts, ideas. I'm almost wanting to call it propaganda that you will get on that it is cheap to live in Panama, particularly Panama City. And we've often said in the last 2 years that we've lived here, that's probably a really bad word to characterize the fact that it can be more inexpensive to live here than where you're from.
Depending on where you're from.
But it also can be much more expensive to live here depending on where you're coming from.
Depending on where you're coming from.
So it's a relative term, and it's not something that, quite frankly, should be thrown out there loosely because in a lot of cases, particularly when it comes to retirement and retirees, Panama is definitely one of the greatest places on the planet, according to a bunch of people who know more about this stuff than I do, for retirees because of a lot of the benefits that you have, particularly with the retired visa. They call it the pensionado visa. However, it also gives you the misnomer that you can probably live a super high quality life on your social security, if you will. Let's say if that's where you're qualifying the particular funds you need in order to qualify for that particular visa.
I just wanted to touch on what you were just saying. So if you look at the requirements, the income requirements for the Pennsylvania visa, which is the retirement visa, it's, I think, $1,000 and then $250 for each dependent. So if it's a married couple, they're saying $1,250 is what your income requirement has to be monthly in order to receive that pension. I want to share with you that that's not necessarily enough money to live in Panama and maintain in Panama City, Panama, and maintain the same standard of living many of you are accustomed into the U.S. And I'm going to dispel that one myth with this first point that we're going to talk about. And so the biggest expense you're going to have living here in Panama is going to be your housing expense.
Exactly.
So no matter where you are in the country, in most cases, that's going to be your most expensive expense. So here in Panama City, the average monthly rent for a 2-bedroom condo that has some decent amenities is going to range you $1,100 to $1,800 a month. The average for a 3-bedroom condo is going to run you about $1,500 to $2,500 a month. It could be higher, it could be lower, but these are based on some mid-range luxury buildings with some amenities in them. So just to give you some ideas, neighborhoods I'm referring to would be Costa del Este, San Francisco, El Cangrejo, and Casco Viejo. Now, when you're renting, there are often other expenses that go along with your renting.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you want to get into that, Glenn.
Well, yeah, I do. And I just want to have you guys again go back and consider in most cases in Panama City, you're going to be probably living in a condominium type environment, apartment living, if you will. There are single family homes here, very limited amount, and they kind of spread out throughout the city. There's not really neighborhoods, if you will, in the city limits of just single family homes. And so with that being said, a lot of the pricing that we're talking about is based on these apartment or condo type environments. But you do have utilities, you do have areas where you're going to have to pay an HOA or your landlord is paying that. So maybe you're covering that in your rent. The other thing I want to add really quickly is that not everything is created equal. Let me just say that on the front end. There's no such thing, and I'll say that with a caveat. In the U.S., we are really, really very well associated with apartment rentals, right? Mm-hmm. It's a whole industry in the U.S. particularly, where you may have said management company, let's call it Southern Management, owns an apartment building that all the units there are apartments for rent. Maybe hundreds of units, right? You don't find that here in Panama City. There may be a building or two that you run across from time to time where it has all of the places there are rentals, but and it's owned by maybe one person. Mm-hmm. But oftentimes those are your hostels, those are your local. They're catered much more towards the local economy than they are to expats. So a lot of those buildings are not going to have the amenities that you're looking for and things like that, if that's what you're looking for. So I'm not going to say you can't find it. It's just not the norm. So when we're talking these kinds of pricing, just please understand it's from the perspective that a lot of it is just condominium living.
Right. And before you guys hold me to these numbers, like I said, these are average rentals. You can find places less expensive. You're going to have less amenities. It's going to depend on the neighborhood that's in. So I'm giving you averages. We rounded out kind of what the low end, high end, and gave you these average numbers. So for rent, you're looking at, let's say we'll go mid-range, say $1,500 a month.
Right.
We'll say your rent is going to range between 13 and 15. We'll say that's going to be your rent. So that in of itself, when we look at what the requirement is for the visa, you don't have money to live here.
Right.
You can't pay rent. So just be mindful of that when you come. Now, that's in Panama City. Now, if you go outside of the city into the interior, you can find places, places less expensive, $600-$700, but you're outside of the city, and that's a whole nother conversation. We'll talk about that on another day because it's definitely different outside of the city.
Yeah, there are pros and cons, and we definitely could do a broadcast just on, interior living and what's available and that kind of stuff.
Right. So Glenn also touched on the fact that there is no standard. And what he means by that, unlike in the U.S., when you go to an apartment complex, all the units in the building are exactly the same. There's going to be one price for a 1-bedroom. There's going to be one price for a 2-bedroom. There's going to be one price for a 3-bedroom. When you're looking at condo rentals here in Panama City, you have to remember each unit is individually owned by an owner. that owner, depending on their motivation, what their financial needs, they set that rent individually. So you could rent in the same building as somebody else that you know, have the same size apartment and be paying drastically different amounts depending on your owner.
Correct.
And also with that, it'll be what's included in your rent. That's going to vary depending on the owner as well. In our case, we don't pay for water, we don't pay for gas. We pay for electric, we have to pay for our internet, but we don't pay for water and gas. That's included in our rent. So we don't have to pay that expense, but some people do have to pay that. It depends on where you are. So I'm only basing these pricings off of what we pay because I don't know what those pricing are. So electricity is another utility that in most cases you're going to be responsible for your electricity. Now, whether it's in the owner's name or you get it transferred in your name, that's often negotiable depending on your situation, whether you want to put it in your name. Now, you've probably heard people say you can have a $16 electric bill. You can have an $8 electric bill. That's possible. There are people that have had that. But the average for most people coming here, particularly from the United States, who are not accustomed to this hot weather, you're going to be running your AC.
Yep.
The average is probably going to be between $70 and $150 a month. It's probably a safe range to kind of budget for.
Exactly.
Now, if it falls in less than that, that's great.
Good for you.
That's amazing. But usually that's the average, between $80 and $150 a month for your electric bill.
One thing I just want to add really quickly concerning the electric bill. Also, guys, please understand that that's relative to the building you live in.
And the street.
And the street you live on. The Cherie is going to get into maybe some specifics around that area. But again, nothing is created equal. So I want you guys, and our goal really is to help you understand the value of the fact that nothing's the same. Mm-hmm. Like what you hear and what we are paying for. That's why we're not going to disclose what we're paying specifically for our unit, because it's irrelative. It doesn't matter, because at this particular point, unless you rented this specific unit 2 years ago when we got here from our owner with our particular contract, it's not going to matter. So we're giving you ranges so that you can understand not only what to expect, but certainly what to budget for.
Right. So when he talks about the electricity, how it varies. So the way Panama City does their electric grid or their pricing, it's broken down in segments. So each neighborhood has a different rate. Certain buildings have a different rate. They've negotiated a certain rate with the power company. There's one power company, it's Naturgy, which is the electric company here in Panama. So depending on what rate your building has negotiated with Naturgy, depending on what neighborhood you live in, depending on what street in that neighborhood. I mean, it's all relative. So even though you may know somebody that lives in your same neighborhood, your electricity may not be the same.
It may be two very different things. Right.
So usage is part of it, but also whatever the rate is for where you're staying. And that's not something that you would know necessarily going in there. You can ask them if they'll give you a copy of a previous month's bill so you can get an idea. But then, although you see that, you're not going to know how they used it. So you don't know what their usage is. So they may have never had their air on and their bill was $20 a month.
Exactly.
So,
and you wouldn't know that.
Right. You wouldn't know that. So just be, for flexibility, just to budget, I would budget at least $80 a month towards electric.
Yep. That's fair.
Plan that. Like I said, if it comes in less than that, great. I think we may have had one bill the whole time we've been here that was over $150. That's when we were trying to figure out the air. But ours usually falls within that range every month.
So when Cherie says the air, please understand that Panama City is incredibly humid, particularly in rainy season. And although the temperatures don't necessarily get much more than about 85 degrees at any given time throughout the year, depending on the time of the year, the humidity can definitely make it feel much, much hotter than that. So you got people who really love their air conditioning, right? You got people who may, particularly if you live in a building where if you get a cross breeze because of the way your unit is situated, you may not have to run your air as much as we do, for example. Cherie and I, we don't live in a building where, in most buildings here in Panama City, particularly residential buildings, don't have central air within each unit.
Right.
So they're inverters and things like that. And so there's single units per room. Well, when you understand the dynamics about, first of all, how they even work, how to work it. It took us a long time to realize that, for us, if we left the house, we probably want to leave it on the dry setting as opposed to cool because it was more energy efficient. That's something we had to learn over time. You certainly don't want to leave it off for any long periods of time because that's a horrible lesson to learn because the mold is a thing. So these are the kinds of things we want you guys to understand. And all of that can affect your price of your bill. And I just need y'all to understand it because you'll listen to us and say, well, so and so told me that they paid. They may have. And I'm not going to refute that. Obviously, I don't live in their unit.
Right.
But I can tell you that it is on a sliding scale in a lot of ways. And I'll be honest with you, there's no rhyme or reason sometimes,
Right.
and there's no standard, if you will, and that's the stuff that'll drive you crazy because you're trying to figure out how do I budget that, and that's why Cherie is helping you guys out by giving you a good range.
Right. So another utility that you want to be budgeted for is going to be your Wi-Fi, your internet. You will have to, in most cases, you're going to be responsible for paying that. There are several different companies here in Panama, depending on the contract with the building. Some buildings have contracts with certain companies, others don't, and you can freely select who you want. Some people have paid, the range is $30 to $50 a month. Ours is a little bit higher. Ours is $60 a month because we have the high end, top of the notch because of what we do. We need to make sure our internet is on all the time. So we, pay a little bit extra, but $70 a month is not a lot for internet. So that's an expense you're going to need to pay. Now, also another thing you want to consider is cell phone service. So a lot of times when you move here, you've heard about people porting their phones and different things like that. This is a personal decision. You have to decide how you want to do your cell phone service. Whether you want to maintain your service in the U.S. and just bring that over here. For us, because of our business, we maintained our U.S. Telephones, but we do have a Panamanian cell phone as well because there are a lot of services here you have to have a Panamanian phone number for.
Right.
So for our Panamanian phone, that runs like $30 a month. That's the bill. That's it. It's unlimited talk and text. I don't use the phone often, but I have it because of those services that I need to have linked to a Panamanian number.
Correct.
So we maintained our U.S. phone bill for our cell phone service there. And then for a Panamanian service, the averages, it can range from $15 to $30 a month if you have a plan. Tigo, Claro, and Claro. Tigo, Claro, and Mas Mobile are the main cell phone providers here in Panama City. And so you can purchase a phone or bring your phone with you. There's a lot of places you can buy phones that are not that expensive here. And you get a SIM card. They actually still use SIM cards in their phones here. So just be mindful of that. Now, certain providers, you can get an eSIM. Like if you bring an iPhone from the state, you can get an eSIM put into it. So depending on your phone, you may need an actual hard SIM card. But that's another expense that you are going to be responsible for when you move into your place. One thing that I did not initially have on my list was household maintenance. So to go back to, we were talking about electricity, we were talking about the AC units. Because the majority of units here have these AC inverters, they're the individual units that are in each room, you have to have those maintained every 90 days. Mm-hmm. Every 3 months, you have to have maintenance done on those. And so that maintenance can run from $20 a unit to $40 per unit, depending on who it is that you have to come to do your maintenance. So that's something you want to budget for. So that's $120 to $160 every quarter. That you would have to pay to have that maintenance done.
It also, just remember, that number is based on how many units we have.
Right.
So there are some people that only have one or two.
Right, so it may be less.
We have 4 units in our home. 3, one in each bedroom. We have a 3-bedroom, and then one here in the living room. But there's none in the kitchen. There's none in the bathrooms and things like that. So just keep in mind that price is going to vary based on the number of units.
Right, great point. So depending on how many units you have, you'll have to get that maintenance done every 3 months. And so that's something you want to be prepared for. Make sure you put that in your budget. Every 3 to 4 months, you need to get that AC maintenance.
For sure.
Why do you want that AC maintenance? Because of the humidity in the air.
Not a game.
You do not want mold to build up in your AC units because you'll be breathing that in. And it'll start smelling a little funky.
And we've heard horror stories of people having to actually move out of their units because the mold, they couldn't get rid of it. Right. So it spread and it got a little crazy. This was particularly in a case where they traveled and they were away from their unit for quite a bit of time. And but that's a thing for sure.
So an additional I guess I'll say a household expense that we chose to have is we have a housekeeper.
Okay, yeah,
That
for
comes
sure.
in once a week, that cleans the house, that does our laundry and everything. So that can vary pricing depending on who you use.
Right.
So I've
Very
heard, right,
individualized.
it depends on the actual person that's providing what services they provide is individualized. You can usually check around in different Facebook groups to try to find somebody. If it's
Yeah.
somebody in your building that can't refer you, oftentimes your landlord, whoever you're renting from, if they already had someone, that may be the best option to go with, is
And
somebody
that's
that they already know.
and that's what we did. We
Right.
carried ours over from the landlord, and apparently, this was 2 years ago, obviously, but she had been working with him for 5 years prior to him leasing this unit to us, and because he had such great experience with her, he basically was like, "Do you just want to continue the contract that I had?" He told us what it was. It made a lot of sense. And so we said, absolutely. And I just say all of that to say, again, I don't want to, that's why we're not going to tell you what we pay her, because at
Right.
this particular point, it's irrelevant. But I think that a good range
Right.
could be what they.
Right. So a range is typically between $30 and $70 a day.
Right.
For your housekeeping. Now, one thing to be mindful when you do get a housekeeper, if you have them come to your unit more than 3 days a week, if you employ them for more than 3 days a week, they are now considered a full-time employee.
I need y'all to hear that. Say that again,
They are
Sheree.
now a full-time employee, and you are responsible for things that come with having a full-time employee.
That part.
So you are responsible for their health care. You are required to give them paid days off. There's a whole lot that goes into that. So just be mindful of that. If you want a full-time housekeeper, you can get one.
Absolutely.
But there are responsibilities that come with that. So just make sure that you understand all of that before you dive into that end of the pool.
Yeah.
In our case, number one is just the two of us. Once a week is good enough for us to keep the house clean. The only thing I am looking for is somebody to cook. If I can find
Right,
somebody
because
to
she
cook, that
doesn't
would
cook.
help.
She cleans, she washes her clothes, she
Right.
folds them up, she puts them away. She cleans the house. I mean, it's like spring cleaning every week. I swear, every week it feels like we got a new unit, and so we're really really grateful. And it takes the load of us having to do it. But to my point, or to Sheree's point, you have to just be mindful of that. If you want them longer than that, you're going past that 3 days a week type situation.
Right, there's a contract.
They're going to come in with a contract.
Right.
You ain't got to worry about saying, "Well, I just won't pay." No, you won't be hiring them because they know what the workaround is. They know how it works, and that's what they're coming to do. Because at that particular point, they're more of a full-time employee. We have people in our building that have live-in nannies.
Right.
We have people in our building that have live-in housekeepers.
Right.
And in many cases, the units within Panama, a lot of them are built with what they call maids' quarters, right? In some cases, they're much too small, in my opinion, for a person to actually live in them. But people do it, and these domestic workers are treated really well in that regard.
Right. And so just be mindful of that. Also, quick question: when it comes to you having a housekeeper, you can do a contract with them if they're only 1 or 2 days, 1 to 3 days. That's at your discretion. Depending on, I would say, depending on how they came to you, use your judgment on whether or not you need to have a contract. But know that if you have a contract, you're bound by that contract as well as they are.
Absolutely.
So just be mindful of that, and there'll be terms as far as when you can terminate and all of that as a part of that contract. So just be mindful of that. So another day-to-day living cost that you need to be aware of is groceries and dining out.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, because we don't eat a lot of processed foods, I tend to shop a lot at the markets. I go and get a lot of our produce and our fruits and vegetables from local markets. I also tend to get a lot of our meat from one of the markets that has like a butcher shop inside, so it's less expensive than going to the grocery store. So the ranges I'm going to give you are kind of the low end and the high end. Also know that if you do use a lot of imported products, and so imported products are anything that's not made in Panama.
Right.
So your Heinz ketchup, your
Hellman's mayonnaise,
Chick-fil-A sauce, all those things are not made here.
Right.
And so you're going to pay a premium. Your Raisin Bran cereal, all those things are not made here, so those are imported in. So the price is going to be higher here.
Yes.
For those items.
Than you probably would pay in the U.S., just so that you know.
It's definitely higher than
it's
what you're
higher
paying.
Here. So think if you've ever been to Hawaii, if you've ever been to Jamaica, if you've ever been to an island where everything is imported, that's not cheap, and it's because they don't produce it. The same holds true here.
Right. So a good average for a household for 2 adults, a good range is probably between $407 a month. $400 and $700 a month. Give or take, it can be less, it can be more, but that's a pretty good range to kind of gauge by, depending on how much you, like I said, how many imported products you mean, how much meat you eat, more of the high-end things that you guys use, and whether you're going to shop more locally as far as at the markets or actually at the grocery stores. Now, there are a couple of chains of grocery stores here. There's Reba Smith, there's Ray's. We do have a Costco-style store here, a superstore that's called Price Mart, which is a great place to get like your paper products, things like that. You can get those in bulk there. I usually go there like once every 2 months to stock up on stuff. So that's not a monthly expense, but I kind of do that every couple of months just to stock up on paper items. Now, when it comes to dining out.
Yes, dining out. Why are you looking at me? I feel like your eyes is just like on me. You know what I mean? Like, what's that about?
So when you come to Panama, you have a wide range.
I'm an addict. My name is Glenn, and I'm addicted to food. I'm sorry.
You have a wide range of places to eat, from local fondas, which are local restaurants that are like little lunch cafes. They're open for breakfast and lunch to serve where the locals go and eat, where it's going to cost you $10 to $20 per person.
Yeah.
For a full meal.
Sometimes cheaper than that. Depending on where.
Depending on that. Then you have the mid-range restaurants, which are, it may be a brand. I mean, we have Applebee's here.
Yeah, well, not fast food. But
fast food would probably fall under the casual, the locals, but the price is going to be about the same.
Somewhere, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So those I would consider mid-range, and those are going to cost between $40 and $70 for 2 people to eat there, depending on what you're eating, depending on if you're drinking, things like that. So that's probably
drinking. I'm sorry. Apologize.
So those are the mid-range restaurants. Now in Panama City, we do have access to a lot of upscale restaurants as well.
Yeah.
Now I will say this: we've been to some pretty nice restaurants here that are upscale restaurants. I've never paid more than I've paid in an upscale restaurant in the States. I don't think I've paid close to what I've paid in the States at one of the upper scale restaurants. Usually, an average, I would say, an upscale restaurant here, if you pay $100 a person.
You in a real fine.
I don't know where you are here. I don't think we've been anywhere that it's been $100 a person.
It could have been, depending on if you were drinking.
If you drank,
that's for sure. So we've been to places like that. Well, I will say this also, just to switch gears into your point, babe. It's relative to. So, for example, if you go to a restaurant in Costco Viejo, Costco Viejo's prices are set like tourist prices. Right. Okay, so you go to Madres and you order a steak, for example, and
depending on what steak you get.
Depending on what steak you get, if you want a tomahawk steak, you're going to pay $100 for that. Now, I promise you, in Ruth's Chris back in the U.S., that same steak is probably going to be $150, $160. So it's marginally cheaper than what you would pay there. But again, it's where you're going. I could go to the same. Listen, we have gone to a restaurant in Costco, the specific brand restaurant there, and then we've gone to that same restaurant in a different location within the city,
and the
prices are drastically different. Yeah. Does that make sense?
So location matters.
So location matters, guys. I promise you.
Right. So on average, I would say, so for us, I think like we said, for groceries, a good average is like $400 to $700 a month. I've never spent $700 a month on groceries, but that's a range we're giving y'all, $400 to $700. Dining out, I would say budget $200 to $400 a month, depending on that depends on how often you eat out.
Exactly.
If you are going to eat out every day, you're going to need a budget more than that, but then you get to bring your grocery bill down.
Because you're not right.
It'll fluctuate.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I know people that eat out every day.
Yep.
They don't cook.
They don't.
They don't cook.
And you can. Listen, let me say this. A lot of for the budget that most people that we know that are spending in the U.S. today in a month, I promise you, you could get away with eating out every day here for less than what you spend for your groceries in a calendar month for two people in the U.S. Would that be accurate, babe?
Yeah. So even if we look at the high end of groceries, which are $700, and let's say $400 for dining out, that's $1,100 a month.
Right.
Unless you're eating at a high upscale restaurant every day,
breakfast, lunch, dinner every day, and drinks. Like you're not spending that. You're not going to
spend that kind of money in a month. You don't have to spend that kind of money. Now, if you want to, you can.
Yes.
But you don't have to. I mean, a lot of people that I know that do eat out all the time, they do mainly mid-range and a few local spots here and there. They might do an upscale maybe once a week.
Yeah.
But it's not,
they're at a coffee shop that's in their neighborhood.
Right.
It's little things like that. If they go to a fonda like that, they're doing soup and a salad and those kinds of. It's not that serious, and that's why a lot of people choose to eat out, because it's easy to do and easy to do relatively. I'll say inexpensive relative to what you were spending before you came here.
Right. If you ate out every day there in the States.
Oh my God.
That's we
put it in. Look, put it in the comments. Put it in the comments, guys.
We've done
dinner for two today. I don't name the city that you're in. Right. If you're in D.C., you're in Baltimore, you're in L.A., you're in Houston. Name the city, and on average, what is it costing? For two people to eat out
at a mid-range,
think Carrabba's or something like that,
and then a high upscale
and a high upscale. I'm just curious, because I promise you, we just got back from the U.S. a few months ago, and we went to our daughter's graduation, and y'all, I promise you, we paid $80 for a pizza and some wings. And when I say some wings, we're not talking about 150 wings either. We're talking about 30 wings and a large pizza, and we dropped $80. And this was in Baltimore. So I'm just saying, I don't know. Y'all tell us. So when people say it's cheap, babe, I think a lot of times that's coming from places relative to where, if you move here from New York City and you lived in Brooklyn, I promise you it's cheap to live in Panama City relative to Brooklyn.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Our place, I promise you, what we have in terms of square footage is probably going to cost you in the neighborhood of $5,000 a month in rent in New York City.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
And the views and what we have.
And we don't pay a fraction of that, relatively speaking. So I just want to let you know. And you're not getting the views. You certainly ain't getting the weather. Does that make sense? And you don't have the amenities of pools and all the things. So
that you can use 12 months out the year.
That you can use. Did she say that part?
Yeah,
she wasn't throwing shade.
I wasn't throwing shade.
She just had a real flashback of how we really living.
I'm sorry.
Do continue, babe. We have other points, and then we have to get out of here.
Right. So the next point we're going to talk about is transportation.
Yes.
So we do not utilize public transportation a lot.
Hardly at all.
Hardly at all.
Not because we can't, not because we wouldn't, but because we choose not to.
Right, we choose not to, and also the neighborhood that we live in, we can walk to a lot of things, so we don't need to.
So let me stop past right there, babe. Choice number one, Sharia and I chose to move to a neighborhood where we did not need transportation.
Right.
So that's a part of an expense. When you guys start thinking about expenses, I don't know what it's like to own a car and have to have insurance on it here. Don't ask me, because I don't know. We haven't had a car in 2 years, and I can promise you I feel liberated.
Don't miss it.
If we need to jump on a bus, we live in a neighborhood where that's accessible. We need to jump on the metro. We live in a neighborhood. We can jump on the metro and ride it all the way to the airport. That's not a problem. But we don't travel. We don't need that kind of transportation. And for the most part, I mean, we have a driver that if we need to go out for the day, we have access to our driver, and he can take us, and he'll speak. Many of you guys have met Omar, and he can help translate or whatever. But for the most part, we're Ubering.
Right.
We're going to Uber in most cases.
And so let me address this. So
please.
You guys have heard us say we have a driver. We have Omar. Omar is not on salary with us.
Not at all.
Omar is not our personal private driver. He is our preferred driver.
He is.
He is the first person that we connected with, that we built a relationship with, and he's whenever he's available, if we need him,
Yep.
he makes room for us. He's our preferential driver. Now I know people here that ask, can they get a driver on staff? You can do whatever you like.
You can do what you want to and live in color.
I have no idea how much that would cost.
Me either.
Because we have not done that. So
we don't have a reason to do it,
right,
y'all. If we had somebody on staff,
if we had a job, if we had somewhere to go to every day,
that might be different.
Then we would look into
and it would have to be a place 20 minutes out, an hour outside the city.
Right. That would make it make sense to have a driver.
It's like that doesn't make sense. So
right.
No.
So on average, public transportation, the bus and metro ride is 35 to 50 cents per ride. Let me say that again. 35 cents.
Yes.
To 50 cents.
Yes.
That's half $1.
And if you haven't
figured... That's 2 quarters, or it's a quarter and a dime. So a quarter and a dime or 2 quarters.
Or 5 nickels.
Right,
listen, let me say this. If you haven't figured out, Panama uses the U.S. dollar. Now, they have the Balboa, which is tied directly to the U.S. dollar in terms of currency. So there's no exchange rates. There's no, you go to Colombia, it's a peso, or whatever the case may be, or Mexico.
No, you can
use your American dollars.
American dollars.
Your American dollars, as they would say in D.C.
Right. So now for the Metro, you can get a Metro card that you can put money on it and use it. So you don't have. They do also have access. You can use your debit card, your Visa, your credit card, not debit card, your credit card at the terminals if you want to, or you can get the card. Use a one-time fee for the card, and then you can recharge it and use it as much as you want. And I think you can use that for the Metro and the buses, if I'm not mistaken. Now, when it comes to buses, there are several different kinds of buses. There are the city metro buses,
mass transit that you're normally used to in any given city in America.
And then there are the pirate buses.
Yes,
which are Diablo Rojos and Diablo Verde, depending on where you are. These are buses. They're very colorful and exciting.
They look like party buses
on the outside.
It's a party.
But they are not regulated.
No.
So you might get on there and it's a goat sitting next to you.
You get what I'm saying?
500 people on the bus and ain't no air. So,
right. And if you want to travel
if you want that experience, go for it.
Ain't nobody mad.
Yes.
We just telling you, you might not want to be on your way to a function that you A, want to get there on time, B, looking like you actually took a bath that day, and C, smelling like you want to be around people. Because folks, listen, it's a situation, y'all. So I promise you.
You got to remember that it's hot here.
It is hot.
So to get on a bus with no AC
is a problem.
You want to make sure you're going somewhere where that doesn't matter if you're going to catch those buses.
Right.
But you do have several options for buses.
Exactly.
Another form of transportation that's readily available here in the city. Now, public transportation is readily available here in the city.
Yes.
When you get further outside the city, it's not as accessible.
Suspect.
Same with taxis and Ubers. Now, they have taxis out in the interior.
Yes.
You can pretty much get taxis, but that's another non-regulated form of transportation.
Right.
So here in the city, you can do Uber. I think there's another service that provides ride sharing similar to Uber. The average Uber is $3 to $6 for a short ride. A longer trip may range you $10 to $20.
At the most. I don't know if we've ever paid $20 for an Uber.
We paid more than that when we went out to the ranch, which was a 2-hour ride.
Okay, yes. When we first got here, the first weekend we got here.
Right, that was 2 hours outside of the city.
Yeah.
It was 2 hours outside of the city, and that was $50.
Was it $50?
$50.
Okay.
For 2 hours outside of the city. It cost us more than that to catch Uber from the airport in Norfolk to our daughter's house, who lives 15 minutes from the airport.
And it cost, and they want
$80.
No, it was $70.
It was $80.
It don't matter. It was too much. That was, and look, they wasn't blinking. They say, that'll be how you will pay for that. You know what I'm saying?
Like, this what the price
It's like,
is.
are you kidding me?
I'm closing the thing, opening it back up.
Right.
Like, is it a surge? Ain't no surge.
This is just what it's costing. So we definitely got sticker shock going back, but we digress a little bit. Just keep in mind, guys, that in the city, unless you are, maybe out at the Amador Causeway, or you may be out in a sort of an edge of the city type situation late at night, you may not have them as plentiful throughout the week or weekend, but for the most part, you can get back and forth wherever you need to be.
Easily.
I've never had to wait on an Uber more than 10 minutes, 15 minutes at the
Yeah,
max.
if that. Yeah.
If that.
If that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's rare. Like more normally you're getting them pretty much, 3 to 5 minutes, depending on where you are and all that. So Uber is incredibly easy. I will say this. Most Uber drivers do not speak English.
Right.
You will find the occasion that some do, and they are eager to learn to speak English.
You need to know your numbers in Spanish.
Because at that particular point, they're using their fares as opportunities to get better at their English. Mm-hmm. However, that is not the norm. I would say probably 85% of the drivers that grab you are not going to speak English.
Right.
In that case, like Cherie said, you're going to need to know something. And here's the thing I need you to understand. Just because you got a cell phone, translator, and all the thing, don't mean you always gonna have a signal.
Right.
And I just need y'all to understand that those kinds of things happen. So please make sure that you are at least familiar with, your numbers and being able to understand some things so that you can figure out.
Learn 0 to 9.
Yes.
Because then you can give them the code. You got to get your
PIN. Yeah, right.
Even if you got to give them each number individually, learn your numbers from 0 to 9, so you can give them the numbers for your PIN when you get in.
And just understand that it might be a pack your patience.
Right.
Because the other part you'll find is that if you get into an Uber driver, one of my famous things is, I'll hola, buen dia. They don't say buenos dias really a lot here in Panama. They shorten it up, so it's buenos or buena or bueno or buen. That's Panama. They just gonna cut their words short, right?
Good.
But when you get in, hola, buen dia, buenos.
Be cordial.
Be cordial, speak, and then they'll ask. The very next thing out of their mouth will be probably bienvenidos, welcome. It'll be, they may say hola, cómo está. They may say something like that, but they really are asking for that PIN number. So go ahead and get ready. It's only a 4-digit number.
Right.
So like Cherie said, if you know 0 through 9, you can get through that part. And then you're going to go along the way. For me, I often, because Cherie and I are forcing our Spanish learning capabilities here, we purposely moved to where we live so that we could immerse ourselves in the culture. But this is where we start having conversations. And I may say, estoy aprendiendo español. And that means I am learning how to speak Spanish. However, para es muy poco, it's very small or muy poquito. And then I often will get a laugh. And the laugh is,
mi inglés
es muy poquito. And that begins a lighthearted sort of conversation back and forth. If you have your translator, certainly use it. But you really should feel very, very comfortable.
Right. So another thing, just like we said, we can't really touch on owning a car because we don't have one. I know expenses that you will incur, of course, will be if it's going to be your maintenance, it's going to be your gas, it's going to be your insurance here. And I would do your due diligence and do your research in regards to that prior to bringing a vehicle here or prior to purchasing a vehicle here, so you have as much information as possible on that. Another thing to consider when you do have your own vehicle here in the city, there is not a lot of public parking throughout the city.
At all.
Although you will have parking in your building, most buildings, most residences have their own parking. If you're going to go to the store and you're driving to the store, not going to a mall, most of the malls have parking, but if you're going to a store, just a local neighborhood store, some of them don't have parking. They don't have parking lots, so there's on-street parking. So be mindful of that you may have to park quite a ways away.
Blocks away.
Or it can be difficult trying to find parking to get to these places. So just be mindful of that when you're out. And also be mindful of rush hour. There are certain times during the day you don't necessarily want to be out if you ain't got to be out, because what could normally be a 15-minute drive could take you an hour. And that's the same for when you're riding Uber. Just be mindful of the times that you're going to and from because of the traffic patterns in the city.
Yeah.
Know that if you leave and you're in the heart of rush hour, or if you leave and it's raining,
pack your patience.
And know that you're going to be delayed.
Yeah.
So
just to give
send
you
a
guys
note to whoever's waiting on you, tell them I'm on my way. I'll get there when I get there.
Yeah, and then two things to just consider. A, it's the culture, so everyone understands. Trust me, nobody is in a rush to get nowhere in that regard. But the other part part of that is, guys, is that half the population of the entire country lives in Panama City.
Right. So it's a
So if
whole lot of
Panama
people.
has about 4 million people in terms of the population of the entire country, half of those people live in the city, and most of them jokers got cars, whether they drive them or not. Many of them got cars. So you'll see car dealerships and people are driving and all that sort of stuff. So, and the other thing is that their traffic laws are a little different. You know what I'm saying? And so Omar has to remind us we do have stop signs. You just don't see them.
It's a suggestion.
It's a suggestion, right? No. So I just want to let you know it's a whole thing, and then God help you if you run into some of our motorcycle friends, because they have a whole different set of rules, to be really honest. So yeah.
Right.
Anyway, go ahead. Let's get out of here,
So
babe.
a few last things I just wanted to mention. Another cost to consider is for postage and shipping, because Panama does not have a postal service. You're going to have to have a mail forwarding services if you're getting packages sent here, if you're having mail sent here. So that's an additional expense you need to budget for. Also budget for, just miscellaneous household supplies, things like that. Your personal care if you go to the barbershop.
Yeah.
Which.
Why are you looking at me like that? You're a little stuck.
If you go get your hair done, whatever.
If you go
so those are things,
and do some self-caring, like I do,
just budget for
shout
that.
out to my boy Ernesto. If you are a brother or a sister that's interested in a brother or a sister cutting you who is bilingual, holler at your boy. Ernesto will take care of you. Now, it's in the Rio Bajo, which is, where we at, right?
It's the neighborhood.
It's the neighborhood. But I like it like that, because at that point now I get a chance to be immersed in culture. I tell Ernesto all the time, dude, I would pay money to come and just sit and listen to the shenanigans that's going on in the barbershop. So it's a whole thing, but it is relatively inexpensive here, because I pay local prices. I don't pay expat prices, because
you don't go to
I don't go to them kind of barbershops. Right. Exactly.
Right. So another thing to consider is medical expenses. If you have ongoing medical, if you have prescriptions, medications, things like that, to budget for that. I would say when you come and visit, stop at a pharmacy just to find out how much your prescriptions are going to cost here. And one thing with prescriptions, if you got a picture of your bottle, if you got the name of your medicine, you can walk into the pharmacy and just ask for your medication. For most medications, you don't need a physical script to get refills. Like certain narcotics and things like that, you do. But for the most part, you can walk in. If you show them that you have a prescription from the States, you just show them the bottle. Or if you know the name of the medication, in many cases, they'll go ahead and fill it. And you can find out how much the price is for your medication. As far as medical coverage, depending on your situation, whether you're going to get a local plan, whether you're a veteran, there are a lot of different avenues as far as medical, but do your research, figure out what that's going to cost you, make sure you include that in your budget. And just every little thing that you think about that you are paying for now, consider those things, build that into your budget. If you normally go get your hair and nails done every week, you can still do that here. It's probably going to be a little bit less expensive here, but budget for that so that you have that in your budget. So when you come down to the bottom line of what your monthly budget should be, a comfortable range, I would say a realistic monthly budget for a couple of two, living comfortably in Panama City can range from $2,500 a month to $4,500 a month. So I think that's a fair and a realistic range. Know that the $2,500, that means you're not eating out as much. You're not, your rent is less expensive. So you're going to be on the lower end in every area for that $2,500 a month. $4,500 a month, you living pretty good here.
Really good.
You living really good. You probably live in a high-end luxury condo. You eating out pretty regularly. You might buy groceries as well, but you're living life.
You're doing pretty well.
You're able to go out and do things throughout the month. So just be realistic about what you want your life to look like when you move abroad. And build all of that in, and then look at realistically what is that going to cost.
So, guys, real quick, before we get out of here, I just want to encourage you, if you've not subscribed to the channel, please do that. Sheree and I like to go live pretty much every other week. We post these videos every week. We try to do a live one every other week so that we can do some Q&A. Subscribe to the channel, set your notifications so that when we go live, you definitely are getting notified. We also want to encourage you, by the time you hear this video, we will have just wrapped up our very first real estate information session, and I'm excited about it because it's been 2 years for us, and now we are at the point where we're ready to invest in the country. And so we've partnered with a real estate professional, brother, that I've known the whole time I've been here. We've played golf together. We hung out together. I know him well. He's been the real estate agent for friends of ours who bought properties. We trusted brother Matthew Marks. I'm excited that we're building a relationship with him where we're going to be doing these type information sessions online regularly. And if you want to be in the next one, do me a favor, click the link in the descriptions below, and you can get access to the wait list for the next one. We don't have a date on it as of yet, but I'm sure as soon as it's announced, you'll be one of the first to know if you're on that wait list.
Right. And so we just want to remind you guys, if you are interested in becoming one of our day ones, go ahead and join the channel. You can be a day one member or a day one plus member. And I want to shout out all of our day ones.
Shout out to the day ones.
So we appreciate you guys. We appreciate your support. And if you want to support the channel, that's one way that you can support us. Also, you can always be a super fan by giving us a heart, a gift, whatever
those things down there
them things are. Y'all know what they are. If you want to support us that way. And as always, we want to ask you guys to please subscribe if you have not subscribed. Share the channel out so that we can spread this joy with more and more people.
Listen, we've got a lot of things coming up on the horizon. I'm looking forward to catching up with you guys next week, because at the end of the day, here's what I can promise you. You cannot get to any place of significance
by yourself.
Lonesome, because we all
need
some help.
Y'all
be good.
Help me.
And we will talk to y'all next week. Help me, Jesus. Help me. Help me now.
Bye, guys.